Our underworld goddess is nearly upon us. I hope you've all been saving. Hello everyone, Soberoni of G&A Reviews here with a servant spotlight for the adorable tsundere goddess who will be using your Christmas bonus as her catalyst, Ereshkigal. We'll be examining her stats and skills, as well as going over pointers on how to utilize her effectively and an overall grade, comparing her to how she stacks up to the other 5-star servants. Now, onto Eresh's stats. Eresh has a max HP of 16,065 and a max attack of 10,343, which becomes 10,860 thanks to her Lancer class modifier. She has the highest HP stat of all the Lancers in the game, although, as expected, she also has the lowest attack stat among the 5-star Lancers. Compared to the rest of the 5-star servants, she stacks up very similarly, with the 4th highest HP stat in the game, but very low attack. Eresh's stat spread obviously favors defense heavily, which is ideal for a more support-based playstyle. Taking a look at her skills, her first skill is Hidden Majestic Crown rank A. It applies invincibility for 1 turn, and has between a 60 and 80% chance to also apply Nullify debuff, Death immunity, and Buff removal immunity for a turn, all depending on level. Her second skill is Mana Burst Cage rank A+, which increases her Buster Card effectiveness for a turn and increases her NP gauge, both between 30 and 50% depending on level. And her final skill is Blessing of Kur rank EX. It applies the Blessing of Kur trait to all allies for 3 turns, also increasing their defense between 10 and 20%, NP gain between 20 and 30%, and maximum HP between 2,000 and 3,000, all depending on level for 3 turns. As for passives, she has Magic Resistance rank D, which increases her debuff resist by 12.5%, Territory Creation rank A+, which increases her Arch Card effectiveness by 11%, and Core of the Goddess rank B, which applies damage plus 225 and increases debuff resist by 22.5%. As for her deck and Noble Phantasm, Ereshkigal has a Quick Buster deck with Quick Arts Buster and a Buster Noble Phantasm. Her Noble Phantasm, Ereshkigal Ereshkigal, increases her own Buster Card effectiveness for 1 turn between 10 and 50% depending on overcharge. It also deals heavy damage to all enemies with between a 300 and 500% damage modifier depending on level. It also increases the attack of all allies with Blessing of Kur for 3 turns by 20%. Taking a closer look at her cards, we see that her Quick card hits 4 times, her Arts hits 6 times, her Buster card hits once, and her Extra attack hits 4 times. She has an NP gain rate of 0.54% and a star rate of 11.8%. She has very good NP gain due to the massive 6-hit Arts card, and fairly good star generating from her double Quick deck. Finally, the analysis you've all been waiting for, if my comment section is anything to go by. So how good is Eresh? Well, she certainly packs some tremendous stats. She has one of the highest HP stats in the game, a whopping 16,000, which makes her really tanky. And she also has very good NP gain and star generating, all signs of a good support. Her only weak point is her attack, which is abysmal for a 5-star servant. But they say a servant is only as good as their skills, and if that's the case, Eresh is a force to be reckoned with as she packs a solid mix of offense, defense, and support skills in her kit. Mana Burst Cage is probably the most immediate skill you'll notice. Not only is this skill a standard 50% Mana Burst, which is already great, but it's also a 50% NP charge. This skill is pretty nuts. It allows Eresh to Noble Phantasm very quickly and easily, and it grants her a super steroid. It's particularly great for supporting allies with your Noble Phantasm, and for farming with craft essences like Golden Sumo and Aerial Drive. But the real bread and butter of Eresh's kit comes from Blessing of Kur. This is a party-wide buff that increases your allies' defense, NP gain, and max HP considerably. Needless to say, this skill gives Eresh excellent support potential in any team comp. Finally, Eresh has her own personal defensive skill in Hidden Majestic Crown. It applies invincibility and also has a chance to apply Nullify debuff, Death immunity, and Buff removal immunity. The chance effects all have a high chance of activating, but they're largely irrelevant. The most important thing about this skill, by far, is the invincibility, because that's going to keep Eresh safe from any enemy Noble Phantasms. Skill priority for Eresh should be Mana Burst first for the big damage steroid and, more importantly, the NP charge for farming and utility, followed by Blessing of Kur for more support potential, and then Hidden Crown last. Eresh's Noble Phantasm plays an equally large role in her appeal. It's an AoE buster attack that further buffs your buster cards before doing damage, and it also increases the attack of all allies that have the Blessing of Kur trait by 20%. This Noble Phantasm does a lot. From an offensive standpoint, it is great for farming and has excellent synergy with Mana Burst. The additional buster buff the NP gives prior to damage means that if you can manage to buster Brave Chain with Eresh, it's gonna hurt a lot. On the support side of things, the NP also buffs all your allies who are already being buffed by Blessing of Kur, so you almost always want to save your third skill for right before you NP. That way you and all your allies will be able to get a charisma buff on top of all the other buffs that her skill gives. It's also worth mentioning that while Eresh may not be the best NP looper in the game, she can potentially NP twice within 3 turns with some help and a lucky crit, in which case the buff does stack. It's also great to lead off NP chains with Eresh's Noble Phantasm, that way your other allies get the damage boost to their NPs. As you can see, Eresh is quite versatile and can really do a lot. As I mentioned earlier, her Mana Burst skill makes her an excellent choice for farming since she doesn't need to rely on Kaleidoscope. But aside from farming, she makes for a good flexible support on nearly any team, as her buffs aren't targeted toward any specific card type. So whether you're using her with Buster Servants, Quick Servants, or sometimes even Arch Servants, they can all equally benefit from her buffs. Another big plus for Eresh is that she isn't as defenseless as some of the other goddesses. Her high HP pool, defense buff, heal, and invincibility give her a lot of natural tankiness. So as long as you can keep her buffs up, Eresh can be a solid offensive tank or a high utility farmer. The key phrase there being, as long as you can keep her buffs up. Which is where we run into some problems with Eresh. She has cooldown issues. All of her skills run on a 6-turn cooldown at max rank, which isn't terribly long on its own, but given that her Mana Burst and Invincibility only last for a single turn, and Blessing of Kur is 3 turns, you're going to spend most of the battle with your skills on cooldown. Not having access to Mana Burst every Noble Phantasm is especially harmful, as Eresh's Noble Phantasm damage doesn't amount to much. Even with the Mana Burst active, Eresh has one of the weakest AoE Noble Phantasms among all the Lancer servants. Don't let all of her buffs fool you, she still hits like a wet noodle. And that lack of damage hurts Eresh most of all, because it means that she won't be able to clear certain high HP waves if you're farming some of the more brutal events and free quests. It should also be noted that even though Eresh has good NP gain on paper, most of that is concentrated on her amazing Arch card. So if you don't manage to pull that and crit with it, or work it into a Brave Chain, you'll find that Eresh's Noble Phantasm gain is a lot slower and thus wildly inconsistent. Sometimes you'll be able to Noble Phantasm on back-to-back turns, and sometimes you're going to wait between 3 to 5 turns between NPs. All that said though, a lot of Eresh's weaknesses are made up for by her sheer versatility. She works well in almost any team you can think of that needs a Lancer on board. She can fill the role of supporting stronger servants while also being able to put out some DPS of her own, or she can be the primary damage dealer if you want to invest more in her NP gain and damage. If you want to use her as more of a support, then she works exceptionally well with servants like Karna, Ushi, and Ibaraki. As a fellow Lancer, Karna and Eresh can be used together for most fights, and Karna benefits a lot from the additional defense, healing, and NP gain from Eresh, as he lacks any defensive skills of his own. His Buster Resist down also does help Eresh's damage. Likewise, Ushi's NP gain skill and charisma work phenomenally when combined with Blessings of Kur, and Eresh can generate some stars for her as well. And much like Karna, Ibaraki appreciates the defense buffs and healing as well as the NP gain from Blessings of Kur. They all synergize with her own skills to make her an extremely tanky berserker. If you would rather focus on having Eresh deal the damage, I recommend pairing her with servants like Raiko Lancer, Shakespeare, and Steno. Raiko Lancer can supercharge Eresh's damage with her buffs, Shakespeare can further buff your damage as well, and his NP charge can help make Eresh more consistent with her Noble Phantasms, while Steno is a great pick if you're going for a more crit-based build, as she can provide star generating and gives Eresh a huge 40% attack buff due to her divine status. Eresh's Bondcraft essence is Flowers Blooming in Kur. It buffs the NP strength and buster card effectiveness of all allies by 10%, an excellent CE if you're using her as an off support. Other good support choices include 2030, Maiden leading Chaldea, and our conquest is the Sea of Stars, if you want to be a little bit more offensive. Otherwise, if you're going to go for pure offense, use CEs like Golden Sumo, Halloween Princess, and Aerial Drive, which all work best for farming, while CEs like Black Grail, Limited Zero, Hero Ellie-chan, and Joint Recital work best for pure damage. In the future, you can be on the lookout for Beautiful Dreamer. It gives starting NP charge, and it buffs buster damage and NP gain, so you can have a really good and quick start with Eresh when you're farming. Overall, Ereshkigal is an excellent offensive support hybrid. Her support skill, Blessings of Kerr, is strong and it has synergy with a wide range of servants. She can be productive in most teams because her buffs are not tied to a specific card type. She's also a solid tank who can stick around for long, tough battles, and she has very strong farming capabilities. She does, however, suffer from the cooldown issues and inconsistent NP gain, and without proper buffing from supports, her damage is very underwhelming, which can lead to some issues farming harder content. With all that said, she gets a B+ from me. I think the only thing separating her from the top tier is an NP interlude to help out her damage, but other than that, she provides excellent utility and is a great addition to nearly any team. And those are my thoughts on Eresh, one of the better offensive support servants in my opinion. But then again, we all know why everyone here is going to roll for her, so this Christmas I wish you all good luck and may all your rolls be blessed. And if you do get her, let me know in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like and consider subscribing if you really enjoyed this video. Join the party over at our Discord, join us on Twitch, and follow us on Twitter. And I'll see you all in the next Servant Spotlight. Soberoni out. Later.